I'll bring the meeting to order. I don't see channel 3 here yet, but we're going to start anyway. So, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. A roll call, please.
Herzog?
Here.
Dalton? Here. Dion?
Here.
Martin? Here. Warren? Phillips? Baxter?
Here. Tonight's agenda is new business. We have superintendent interviews. Mr. James Wisely, Mr. Lucas Treweller. We'll have an open meeting for the public to participate. Are there any additions to the agenda as noted? No? Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Dalton Akers, second by Berza. Roll call vote, please.
Herzog?
Yes.
Dalton? Yes. Dion?
Yes.
Martin? Yes. Phillips? Yes. Baxter?
Yes. Thank you, everybody. I think you're ready. Great. First up tonight is Mr. James Wisely, the superintendent at Constantine Public Schools.
Got a couple papers for you. I brought extras if anybody needs them.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad you made it tonight. This is our second night of interviews. We will have one more round of interviews next Monday, bringing back a few candidates for the second round of interviews. As you came in, we've been working to get feedback forms out on the table. And after each candidate tonight, you'll have an opportunity to fill out that form. It'll be reviewed by the board after the meeting tonight before we begin our deliberations. And we'll move forward that way. So hopefully everybody was able to get one. I know we had some people print us out some extras, and we appreciate that. Now we're going to proceed to our interviews. Mr. Wisely, thank you for being with us tonight. All the board members tonight will be asking you a question in round robin fashion. And so we'll start out with myself and ask you, please tell us how your experiences and qualifications have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Gobles Public Schools.
So I don't know if it was fortunate or not fortunate, but I became a superintendent at the start of the pandemic. So I call myself a COVID superintendent baby. A lot to learn on the fly, having a good team around us to prepare us for what's going to happen. I would say that being a teacher and a coach for 23 and a half years prepared me on how to build relationships with teams. Moving on into administration at River Valley Schools as assistant principal athletic director, learning about budgets, learning about issues that might need to be resolved with parents, community members, coaches, students. Then becoming a middle school principal, you're overseeing a building and evolving into the superintendent of public schools, where I now oversee 135 employees and a $15.5 million budget. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, networking, reaching out to legislators, community members. I do a lot on a daily basis, and the things that we do every day and every moment make us better administrators.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Vice President DeYoung for the next question.
What are the important issues in creating a good board-superintendent relationship, and how will you facilitate such a relationship? How will you communicate with this board?
So I think the key word in there is communication. I over-communicate. So for example, this Friday I'll be sending between, usually on a Friday, 14 to 30 pages of documentation on things that are happening within the district. We don't like things when we're caught off guard. So I break things down by building, I break things down by financial, what are the things that are going on within the district. I also reorganized our board meeting schedule. We went to 9 regular board meetings and 3 work sessions. Our 3 work sessions are held on Saturdays. Our last one was at the beginning of February, lasted 4 hours. The first one is always in the spring, and that will be setting the tone for the next year. I say first one because we're looking at the things that we've done in the previous year to expand that for the next year. So the one that we come into this next fall, we'll lay the groundwork for everything that we're going to be doing. We have a lot of initiatives that we have started in our district, and I will say that I will use the word "we" a lot. It's real easy for me to say that I did this or I did that, but one thing I've learned over time is it's going to take a team, so I rely on our team throughout this entire process. I know at the end of the day, I'm the one that's got to make the decision, but if we're all working in the same direction, that makes a big difference. So as far as the working of the boards, we'll meet in the fall on a Saturday. We'll lay out the objectives, my goals, the vision of the district. I update that weekly in my board notes. We also review them at the regular board meeting sessions. The winter board meeting, the work session, we review what we've done so far. If you need to revisit any goals, and like I mentioned in the spring, we'll recap and get set for the next year. But communication and transparency are the 2 key words that I'm going to use.
Thank you. You've been through this process before, so you know that us not paying attention always isn't us paying attention. It's lots of writing and circling and smiley faces and frowny faces. Next, we're going to move on to Ms. Martin for a question.
This next question pertains to the budget. Tell us what budget development process you use or would use, and how the process works to gain broad support for the final result.
So I think it starts with a plan. Organization is really important to me, and our budget stems from our strategic plan. And I know that you guys did yours in 2013. We've got I think 1 payment coming in 2025. But our budget process completely revolves around our strategic plan. And that includes infrastructure, curriculum, personnel, staffing, everything. So I don't know if there'll be a question about ESSER money or grants and stuff. All the money that we spend revolves around the strategic plan. So for example, I said that we're a $15.5 million budget. We've just finished the last month and a half in budget meetings where our supervisors and building principals have come in. Prior to that, they met with their staff to go over curriculum budgets, needs that they're going to have in their individual buildings. We meet, go through them, depending on where our budget lies, what we have coming in, and we'll make changes to that. Then I meet with our finance committee. Our finance committee meets at least 4 times a year. It seems like over the last 2 years, we've met a lot more than that to go over the incoming grants from the federal and state. And then we'll present that to the board for final approval. Now, we did amend our budget just before Christmas time. But our budget process, as far as just the regular budget FTE funds, we're in that process right now, and we'll be looking for approval probably somewhere around May, June, knowing that we'll need to be amended.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Treasurer Dalton Akers for a question.
Tell us how you plan to maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and the community.
So I am visible all the time. I get to school, I try to get there, my goal was before everybody, but there's always that teacher that tries to beat me, which is great. And it's kind of been a contest between her and I now. She's a retired teacher that actually came back in, and if she doesn't see me, she'll ask me where I was. So I am in the district in every one of my buildings, usually every day. We have 4 buildings, 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. For example, next week I'll start reading in elementary classes for Reading Month. I hold regular meetings with our bus drivers at our transportation department. I meet with our supervisors once a month. I meet with our building administrators once a month. I eat breakfast once a month with our city manager and our chief of police. I attend all of the local festivals. I've sold chicken, I've been in the dunk tank. I performed in a band competition, which was their worst idea ever. I was in charge of Rudolph's hoofs on the roof, and I managed to screw that up. The nice thing is they had come back and made me the instrument that I was supposed to be using in practice. But overall, I'm the point person for the district. I'm the one that everybody's going to look to in the end. So I'm visible. I've been a crossing guard. I have used our floor scrubbers to clean machines, or to clean the floors. So I am visible a lot. Sunday I'll be at the American Legion, giving a presentation to our community who wants to see where we're going with the district. I've been out at our lake associations on a weekend to present. I'm visible. They should know we're the highest employer in the city. We should be visible, and we should be part of our community.
Thank you. Next, we'll move over to Ms. Phillips for a question.
Do you have any experience with alternative funding sources?
Absolutely. So, as a superintendent, we're always looking for more money. In the last 2 years, we've raised over $300,000 in grants. That is excluding ESSER money. This is just different money that we receive from the Michigan Department of Education. So we're always looking for alternative funding. I think the slippery slope there is this a funding that has a timetable on it. We have 2 CMH workers in our district, and they're funded through grant funding. Now, they're really nice to have, and it's a need in our district, but in 3 years when that funding ends, how will we afford it? I received $800,000 in grant money to promote our STEM programs, $140,000 to promote STEM for, we're 80% free and reduced lunch, so to promote STEM in the summer. I received a $131,000 grant we have a large instruction area to improve the sound system in there. So to date, we're looking at $1.6 million this year in grants, including ESSER funds. I think you guys are 2.7 million that you've got in ESSER 2 and 3. I think the difficult part with ESSER 3, I'm going too fast, let me know if we get into financing. ESSER 1 funding, when it came out, was kind of just a free-for-all. You get to use that money for whatever you want. Now that we're in ESSER 3 funding, and you have to provide what's called the narrative, and you have to explain exactly what you're going to be using it for. We're a big STEM school, and we want to promote that. So we did get that approved for just under $800,000. So lots of funding. We have a school resource officer that I just finished the agreement on that. That is paid for by grant money, which is a great addition for us. So we've lots of grants. I would also say that on the side note, we're looking for more sustainable funding. There's 45,000 kids in the state of Michigan that didn't attend school, wherever they're at. So we are looking at ways that we can be attractive. One of the models that we use is from Berrien Springs Public Schools, which has a huge virtual school. We've met the last 2 weeks to see how we can create that. I know you guys have your cyber school and your Lighthouse Academy with Marcellus, which are great funding ideas, and those are things that we have to continue. We look at the 45,000 kids in the state of Michigan that need a place to go, and we would like them to go with us.
Thank you. Next, we move over to Mr. Burza with a question.
So how do you take the pulse of your present community So how do you keep your finger on the pulse of your students, your teachers, your staff, and the community as a whole?
So I'll start with community. When I came to Constantine, we were divided. I would explain it as a district of schools, not a school district. A lot of tensions, pretty much right down the middle of town. Not a lot of appreciation for administration, board members. It just was not a positive culture. So the first thing I did was I met with every single person in the district, staff-wise. Paras, custodians, supervisors, teachers, it didn't matter. Then I started a Future Falcon Committee, which I put both sides of the fence, and I put them on this committee. And we met once a month, and we have made the culture change. And the only way you talk about the pulse is to be in it. And you gotta be willing to have tough conversations. You know, people throw around the open door policy where anybody can come into their office at any time. I think the word that they forget is legitimate. I can take my door off the hinges, and if they don't believe in me, they're not coming to my office. So I've got to get into that community and become legitimate. My principals are the same way. When I talk about our meeting on Sunday that we're having with the community, all my building administrators will be there and my supervisors. Not that I ordered it or demanded it. It's because we've become that team. So with our community, we meet often. Each one of my buildings have their school leadership teams, which are made up of parents, community members, alumni. And we're seeing what we can do different. I would also say that we've reached out to universities to come into our district and evaluate what we're doing. So we're giving our teachers the tools to see what's going on. I talked about open communication, legitimate. I'm in my teacher's classroom every day. It might seem weird that a superintendent's going to pop in there, but we're in this together. And the teaching profession and education as we know it is not in a good state. So the more that we can align together, the better. Teacher evaluations can always be a sticky subject area. We do what's called walkthroughs. All of our building administrators, including myself, do walkthroughs in the classrooms to evaluate. It's not that we're checking on teachers, it's making sure as building administrators that we're all on the same page. And the teachers have been comfortable with that, and now they actually invite us into the classroom. So we're talking about community, we're in it, we're active, and we're involved. We talk about staff, it's the same thing. Our building leadership teams that I'm part of, our high school team met this morning, and we're checking where we're at, what do we need to do differently. We talk about teacher morale, it's not good, so what can we do to make it easier for them? If that means I get to cover a classroom so a teacher can go down and have a break once in a while, we do it. I've been on buses. Like I said, I've met with our transportation department. I've driven students to our early middle college program. You learn a lot driving a bus or a big van in the morning. Things you don't want to. So as far as our staff, that's how we're gauging the pulse. Our students. So I am 100% student driven. I am student first. Everything after that is second. And that takes a little bit of a learning curve because adults, we will usually wake up and we're going to say we're going to do what's best for kids. And then somewhere during the day, we make a decision that was best for adults. I am not that person. I'm going to show up every day at Gobles Public Schools with the intention that I'm going to do what's best for kids. That also means that adults have to be willing to take a step back. In my previous district, when I arrived, they wanted to be successful. Morale was bad. So I met with every single student in that school. And there was one common theme. They were tired of adults saying they were going to change, and they didn't. So when I presented that to the school board that we as adults need to rethink how we're doing things, that's a powerful statement. So you talk about students, we empower them. Every single building in our district has a student leadership team. As adults, if you look at my 90-day plan, the hardest thing we're going to do is leadership. Everybody wants to be a leader. That doesn't mean that they're good at it. But if you've seen our kindergarten, first and second grade leadership team present to you as a board, that's pretty powerful. When they're talking about our core value system, and they're talking about respect and how they should be treating people in the school day, that's pretty cool. Our high school leadership team is going to be presenting at our next board meeting. So we've empowered our kids to lead our district. That doesn't mean that we let them run around like crazy people. What it means is, what we found is when we gave them the power to lead, they lead. And there's a process that they have to go to be on this leadership team, and it's a beautiful thing. So engaging the pulse is we're in.
Thank you. Next question. How would you support building administrators and also be supportive of teachers? We touched on some of the things you're doing over there, but how would you support building administrators and also be supportive of teachers?
So I am an advocate for teachers and students. I did it for 23 and a half years. I coached, I taught. I'm there first. I've been on the news the last 2 months with local news stations talking about we've got an issue. We have an issue with education, and if we want education to change, we have to make teaching a profession that people want to be in. I have frequent conversations with Dr. Rice at the Michigan Department of Education. Teachers need to know that we're in their corner. The last 2 years have been tough, and the people who have been on the ground doing it are our teachers, our support staff. Probably the group that gets forgotten the most is the transportation department. They're the ones that greet kids the first thing in the morning, and they're the ones sending them off. So I go back to the word legitimate. I'm in classrooms, I'm talking to teachers. I have teachers in my office every day talking to me about what's going on.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Dion.
The values of a leader are the foundation for decisions made and greatly influence the direction of an organization. This will also impact what our students are exposed to. In the last few years, districts have encountered unique challenges such as CRT, critical race theory, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and COVID-19. In your capacity as a leader, how have you addressed these with your students, staff, and community?
So we have a responsibility to educate our kids. We're given a curriculum. There's no room in curriculum for self-direction. I don't know if that's the word I want to use. So within our curriculum, we use a vetting system. We've invested the next 5 years into standards-based learning. Throughout this year, each one of our departments have met a minimum of 2 days assigning standards. Our responsibility as a school is to teach within those standards. If we're talking about curriculum, I've ran our health and our sex ed curriculum. We've vetted that process for a year. We involved local churches, community members. We had health professionals in, teachers, parents. So when we're at the end of the process, we can say that we followed every step possible to make sure that we vetted the process. If it does not fit within our curriculum, it is not taught in our school.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
What vision or plan did you set in place in your past position, and did it succeed?
Absolutely. So I laid out my 90-day plan, and succeed, I don't know if I can use the word succeed because it's an ongoing process. I can tell you in my previous district from where we started to where when I left to go to Constantine, we did it. And I know that because of the continual conversations I have with the people that are still there. A month ago, I was invited back down to their history club dinner where they were doing a fundraiser. I've been gone for 3 years. They didn't have to do that, but the impact that we made at that district was meaningful. At Constantine, we implemented a set of core values. We come into a district as leaders, and we want people to lead, but we don't give them the tools to do so. We're real good at creating mission statements and vision statements, but we don't teach anybody along the course of it. I mean, I look at when we walk into Gobles Elementary, there's a tiger there. Our goal, and our MyKit goal, which is our state-issued goal for our district, is portrait of a graduate. So our #1 goal in our district is when a student leaves Constantine Public Schools, and if Jim Wisely asks, what's it mean to be a Falcon, I should be able to get some kind of answer. And that answer is based around our core values. That's our first goal. We teach these lessons every day, K through 12. We teach them on our transportation. Our custodians know it. So if we have a kid in our cafeteria that's not picking up their lunch, and one of our custodians says, hey, are you being respectful, which respect is one of our core values, It takes one board to get this person to understand where we're at. So within our core value system and our fortune of a graduate, that's our goal number one. Our second goal is we got to rethink how we're instructing our students in school. When we brought in professionals from the area, the number one need we heard is kids don't know how to work together. They don't know how to work with their hands. And some of that can be contributed to COVID. We can make that excuse, but it's our job as a district to prepare for it. So we made the transition to standards base. I know you guys are looking at standards-based grade. We took a 5-year plan to implement standards-based into our district. The first year was assigning the standards. So if I'm a math teacher and Jim fails the first quiz, and I look on there and it's standard 1.5, I know as a teacher that that's a weakness within Jim's learning, and I can go back and do that. So in 5 years, K through 5, we will be standards-based teaching, standards-based learning, and standards-based grading. The third thing is restorative practices. It's a state mandate now that we report what restorative practices we're using within discipline. That doesn't mean that we're putting more load on a teacher. We actually relate everything to our core values. So what are we doing to build that relationship within the discipline? So I gave you a really long answer, but if we're very precise and detailed in our plan, we can judge success along the way.
Thank you. Ms. Delmakers.
So you mentioned the current state of the teaching profession. What methods have you used to attract and retain top quality staff?
We're aggressive. We're closer to Indiana, so we've been able to get teachers from there. But I will tell you, we focus on a positive culture. And people enjoy coming to work. I think we hear that a lot. There's laughter, even though that there's a lot of stress on teachers. If you enjoy the process, if you enjoy what you're doing every day. Luckily, we've been able to fill our positions. We go after alumni. If you want people to stay in your district, raise kids in your district, look at your alumni. We also started a new teacher academy, which is the first, where we have our high school kids are mentoring teachers, and they will be earning college credit, which will advance them, and eventually we can bring them back and hire them. So, as I mentioned, I'm a thorn in a lot of legislative sides because they make a lot of decisions, and most of them have never been in a classroom. So, we've got to make it a profession that's attractive. What can we control? Be nice.
Thank you. Everybody caught up? Ms. Phillips.
Tell us about your involvement in collective bargaining in general, then tell us about the most recent contract issue in your district, your involvement in it and the resolution.
So I am part of the Michigan Negotiation Association. I'll be there in 2 weeks for their annual conference. Last year, I settled our administrative assistance agreements. I will say that transparency along this process is key. Our school calendar is live for the next 5 years. So when we talk about the calendar part, our teachers, support staff, whoever, can see whatever we're making changes within the school calendar, so they know they're part of it. We also sent out a professional development survey and what they want to see within that survey. You know, we assume that we are doing the right thing, but we don't always do the right thing. I mean, we have a works card, which each one of our teachers have a purchase card. So if they need to buy school supplies, they get approval from their principal, that's uploaded on their credit card, and then they just purchase it. We don't know if they have that training. So we provide that training if we get back on the feedback. So they all have copies of their agreement. We're talking about administrative assistance that we did last year. We sit down in a room, what can we do, what can't we do? The budget's transparent. There's nothing hidden. We want to be a fair wage. We always compare our county wages to where they're at. We very seamless last year. We are in the middle of our union contracts. Our administrative contract was a 3-year contract. We're looking at a multi-year contract for our teachers. I'll start transportation probably in a couple weeks. and we'll end it with our support staff handbook of fee. Even though the support staff is not a contract, because we want to be a team, we involve them in that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berzak.
So rate yourself from strongest to weakest in the following 4 categories: finance, curriculum, staff and administration, community.
Well, I want to be a great superintendent, so I better be pretty good at all of this. I'm going to say, because I think it's the most important item on here, is the staff admin, is my number one. We can have the most money in the world, if we don't have a productive culture, it doesn't get matter. I'm going to say staff admin number 1, finance number 2, and curriculum number 3, but I would also put staff, admin, and community together. But I can tell you that throughout a school year, these all equal out. Because if I'm in finance, I've been in finance for the last month. Before that, I was in the community a lot.
Thank you. Everybody got up? What have you done to improve the school environment? You've talked a little bit about that. Do you see that translating to the superintendency here?
Absolutely. I would say the first thing I'm going to do is start meeting with people. I have a great connection with alumni in this district. I'm on the Dave Hudson Foundation board. I try to help out as much as I can with the Derek Jackson Foundation. 2 of the most amazing people going through Gobles. We got to find, Mr. Burns brought it up earlier about the heartbeat of the school. We got to figure out the good, bad, and the ugly. What's the perceptions and the realities? And then we've got to have common goals and vision for the staff and board and everybody involved.
Thank you. Mr. DeYoung.
In regards to student achievement, how would you raise standards and expectations in our district?
So because we had the COVID leap year, it was hard to identify graduation rates and so on and so forth through the transparency report. I would say in most districts, our priority should be teaching and teaching the standards, how they align to that. I would say you're second in the county. Gobles has always been strong academically.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Wisely, we appreciate your interest in our open position for a superintendent here. As we wrap up the interview today, we're interested in hearing what drew you to Gobles, as well as any closing thoughts you might like to share with us.
So, I think it was 1983, I walked through those end hallways down there and ran into a person by the name of Dave Hudson. And if it probably wasn't for Dave Hudson, I would have made some pretty bad choices. And one of the things that Mr. Hudson drove into us was loyalty to Gobles and that dedication and commitment that he gave to you, and you needed to return that. So I think, as my experience over 23 and a half years teaching and coaching here and going into administration, I want to be that Dave Hudson here. I think as a parent, having 3 kids go through this district, I'm thankful for what it provided my kids. I think as a grandparent, which is crazy, I want to provide an opportunity for them after high school to be successful. As an admin and a sitting superintendent, I don't envy your decision here. The average term of a superintendent is less than 3 years. I'm in it for the long haul. I think it's going to be difficult to find someone that bleeds blue and orange more than me. And when I left here to get my administrative experience, I had told my kids that someday I would be back. And just so happens I'm sitting here now.
Thank you for your time. If everybody, I saw everybody out there getting a chance to write down their stuff as well. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 6:45. Have an opportunity to fill out your questionnaires and get them turned in on the back table. I believe we probably have a manila envelope back there to be able to put them in. So, thank you.